Hello and welcome to the Property Lifestyle Mastery podcast. I'm Jackie Tomes, and on this show we are having open and honest conversations about investing in property in a way that creates both cash flow and freedom from those that have been there and done it. And myself and Dave, having done over £18 million of deals over the last 10 years, sharing our highs, lows and lessons in going through that, and also creating the holiday every 6 weeks lifestyle that we have become known for. So on this show we talk about everything from big picture strategy and maximising your potential right down to practical solutions. And on this week's episode we are joined by Gul and Nick Hanspal from Glensec, and these guys are an incredible duo. These are brothers, and we've been working closely with them for a number of years now, watching them and supporting them go through really driving forward their family property investment business into a whole new phase and a whole new era. So this week Dave is talking to Gul and Nick about how they've raised over £350,000 of investor finance in the last 24 months and how they've been developing their investment model to be ready for the next phase of growth. So we're talking about what's better, steady and sustainable growth or fast and flashy growth. Fantastic conversation to come up. Here is Dave and Gul and Nick.
Hello, Gul and Nick. So great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me. Just for the listeners here, Gul and Nick, we've been working with these two for quite a while now, helping them to move their business. I'll let them explain what their business is, but moving from a kind of family-run property business through to different forms of property. And we've been through a couple of different phases there, in particular, supporting them as they work out how to go from working with their own funds to how they can work with and help other people to get the funds invested by working with them. So yeah, Gul, Nick, why don't you just quickly introduce yourselves to everyone?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dave, for just having us on the podcast. And we've been working with you, I think it's been best part of maybe 3 or 4 years now. So it's just
4 years.
It's it's an honor to be given that platform and for you to support us in our journey. And yeah, look, it's been a good journey for us. So I'll kick off. My name's Gul Hanspal. My brother Nick is also as part of the business. Our business is called Glendale Securities Limited. We're known as Glensec. So bit of background on Glensec. We are a family-owned and run property investment company. We've been doing it for a long time. So I'll be honest, it started with our parents more than 25 years ago. Very different model, different world back in the 90s when property was not as mainstream. There were not as many kind of investment products or buy-to-let mortgages. It was a very different space. But we've been in commercial property for a very long time. And that was a traditional model of buying yielding investments. You'd buy, you'd accumulate cash. There was no development. It was seen at that point in time like a holy grail type investment because you just sat back, you earned rental income. They were fully repairing and insuring leases. And that was a great journey in the 90s and the 2000s. So Nick and I grew up in that setting of working with our parents, building the business, putting forward ideas for geographies and demographics that we liked and where we should invest. Naturally,
Absolutely.
as you would expect, it's changed a lot. And Nick and I have been at the brunt of that, where buying a Woolworths up in some northern town doesn't really work anymore if you just want to sit back and relax and have 25 years of rent. That's harping back to the past. So yeah, Nick and I have been on a journey in the last, I'd say 4 or 5 years. A lot of that time has been with yourself, Dave, and Jackie, around how do we modernize a business which is no longer that business model of investing in just pure play commercial property and earning a nice yield. Doesn't really work anymore. The economics don't really work. So Nick and I have been very much on a journey of I'd say balancing our portfolio and adjusting it to be more residential in focus. Would you agree with that, Nick? Like, what's your views where we're going?
Well, absolutely. I think it was a really, really difficult start because we were trying to work out where to go from being purely in commercial, realizing that being purely in commercial in modern era where you have the high street, closing down, lots of shops going empty, the quality of the tenants were getting worse. Certainly the lease lengths were getting worse. The security that used to come with being in commercial was kind of completely going. And there was a corresponding massive drop in the prices of a lot of commercial properties. So for what we needed to do, we needed to rebalance into residential in some way, shape or form. But right at the beginning, when we were looking at residential, oh my God, there's so many things that people are doing. It's all over the place. Everyone's doing everything from, HMOs, service to accommodation. You hear lots of different kind of things. I think originally we spent a lot of time looking around in London. We were looking at flat reconfigurations, and we spent a fair bit of time in London looking in that area. I even got one out of it. I ended up buying a place myself to live there with my wife, and we had a great time converting a 2-bed to 3-bed, lease extension, everything. So there were some learnings there, but there wasn't really the ability to scale in the way that we wanted to, and that we needed to. And I think that's where, talking with yourselves, Dave and Jackie in particular. I think Gul met Jackie at it must have been.
Yeah, it was my very first pin that I just
really?
joined randomly. It was the first pin I joined, Berkshire pin.
And there was Jackie.
And she was just the speaker. I was like, I don't know who this is,
creme,
but
creme.
yeah. And some of those are better than others, but that was one of the best. So we got the intro there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Nick, you're right. So we went through this kind of point in our journey where we had a base of property, and mum and dad had built that, and we'd helped them build that. And then we'd gone through a deleveraging because we were still very commercial, but you don't get a lot of very long dated tenants. Back in the day, you'd get people fighting they'd pay a premium to take a new lease. All of that's gone. Mm-hmm. So we got to there's a base of good, solid commercial that was still left in the portfolio. And we thought, let's look at other things. What about industrial? Really super popular, really low yield, not a lot of returns. Looked at other stuff like self-storage. Again, you need a lot of capital expenditures. And then Nick he's more the tech guy. I'm a finance guy by background. My background is in finance. I'm a chartered accountant. I work in the city. But Nick is very much more tech and understanding about operations and what's coming down the track. And I remember him talking about AI 5 years ago and saying what's going to be something that's defensible in our portfolio that we don't have. And ultimately, look, it seems pretty damn obvious since where most people start, which is resi, and it is rebalancing to resi. So, good luck to all those people who are already in industrial. Great, those guys got into it 10 years ago. Loads of Amazon sheds, brilliant. Those guys are creaming a lot of cash. But actually, in a world of, who knows where AI is taking us? People still fundamentally need somewhere to live. So having a commercial retail outfit is fine if you're in good demographics and good locations. But obviously we've seen the shift away from the heydays of the 90s and the 2000s, post GFC, a lot of that landscape's changed. But so, yeah, really, Dave, look, in summary, where we're going now and when Nick and I wanted to take this is how can we balance this? And we can talk about this a little bit more, but our journey started with saying, look, we're used to dealing with multiple units in commercial. Well, let's do that in resi. Let's actually buy some multi-unit blocks of apartments and just try our hand at pure resi investing. Where that's now culminated is we've said, well, we've got a little bit of both experience. We'd like commercial and we know that world really, really well. We've done a couple of projects, our first projects, which have used non-Glensec funds as well as some Glensec funds. We've gone out and raised our first capital. And now we come back into the commercial space, very much working on mixed-use projects. So we've said, let's actually leverage the knowledge. Let's not just completely dump it, because we've got 25 years of commercial property experience. Why completely go zero base camp again on that? Use that knowledge, combine it with the last 2 or 3 years where we've been working with yourselves around building a resi strategy. And now this is where we find ourselves today, which is a very exciting time for the business where we're now pivoting very much back into commercial conversions into mixed use assets. So that's a bit of the genesis on Glensec and where we're at.
Well done. Great and great intro to you guys. That's like you've covered such a good chronology front to back there, which is really great. First thing I wanted to dive into, as it were. Actually, first I was going to say, I know the reason you came to Jackie, it was that moment when you're just trying to work out the next model, and you spent, and really it was just that she's so good at supporting people to work out where to invest, what the right model is, and you're right, just clarify multi-unit blocks was the best option, because obviously you've said HMOs might have been on the picture, who knows what else is out there, and just like getting that super clarity so that you could like charge forwards again. But I just want to go back to, like, obviously you're a family business, and I love the fact that you're a family business. It's one of the reasons I resonate with you guys, because we're basically a family business. We don't have the pedigree you do. You've got your parents there. So I wanted to first dive into the relationship with the parents slightly and just say, how's that been, moving away from taking control of the business from them? How's that relationship shift been? Are they still involved? Like, what goes on there?
And Nick, you're temporarily living with them, so I'll let you take the question.
Yeah, Gul's right. I sold the flat, didn't find a place in time, so now I'm here, which is I'm loving it. Mum and Dad, if you're listening, it's great. I suppose it started off with wanting they obviously wanted to be kept in the loop on things, but I think really what's happened is we've taken it and changed so many things now about the business, how it fundamentally operates, that they are not really as involved anymore. I let them know what's going on because they want to know what's going on, and they are very, very good sources of knowledge. I mean, the knowledge that they have and that they've acquired over a long period of time, I think that's one of the real benefits. It's having that wise kind of ear who can say, this is exactly what you should do in this particular situation because we've done this before. So it's definitely it's definitely be changed for them. I think they're quite happy taking a bit of a step back entirely and letting Gul and I run things. But it's been So go ahead.
No, go on.
No, I've just got. Oh, I've lost my train of thought now.
I was going to say, like, Mum and Dad's experience in property investing goes back way before Glensec. There's been many iterations. They're in their 70s now, and everyone starts in resi. Almost everyone starts in some form of resi strategy, and they were the same. It's just by the time they'd got to a point where they'd exhausted that. And actually, we come from a line of kind of property entrepreneurs. My grandfather, like our grandfather on my mum's side, is also a very successful property person, delved into commercial. So it made sense that we should go all in on commercial. It was the right time, the market, etc. So their background and the grey hair they've accumulated is in that space.
Yeah.
And more importantly, about deals and making sure you get a deal. So they still are very good at sniffing a deal. And they are our investment committee, I'd say. I would say they're more, as Nick says, your non-exec directors and shareholders of the business. Or like co-chairs. So we have our monthly board meetings. We update them on what's going on. But in terms of delivery, the energy, getting stuff done, maybe with occasional input on what's your view having done this 30 years ago, that's Nick and I. So Nick is very much that we divide labor very, very distinctly, that he's anything to do with management of the portfolio and delivery of new units in the portfolio. So Nick has become very au fait with dealing with contractors, with utility providers. It could even with tenants, both commercial and resi. So we've got a wealth of experience in Nick around the actual management delivery side. And then I suppose there's the side around actually developing strategy, originating deals, like finding good deals that the economics work, both for whether that be for us as Glensec as equity and then a partner coming in more as like a lender. That's my expertise. So working on the finance side, understanding economics, understanding what is a good deal, what is not a good deal, where to source the finance, both from banks and otherwise. So we kind of plug and play. And I think as a team of four, that's quite a good dynamic. So you've got two kind of co-founders, if you like, co-leads. And then, Mum and Dad still very much in the background, a lot of experience, very supportive of what we're doing. I think, look, honestly backing the journey effectively. So keeping us on the straight and narrow.
That is awesome. I love we talk about it as a family business, and you've just epitomized the perfect family business for me, which is that the older generation is still there. You've still got their wisdom, but the younger generation are the ones that are dynamically shifting the new approach and bringing the new energy. And it really is the reason this family businesses can grow so large and do so well, because they're accessing that wealth of history as well as doing new stuff, which someone like me who just gets into property from a fresh without that history behind me, actually it's something I don't have access to. I've got to just start on my own, and I think that's one of the reasons you guys are so good at what you do. Just to finish up with the family dynamics, I'd just love to know a little bit more about you two, your brothers. I've got two brothers, right? And I used to be a musician, and honestly, I played in small chamber groups. And one of my brothers is a cellist, and I'm a viola player. And I'm not gonna lie to you, we could just about work together. It was fine, but the dynamics, I could never have worked professionally with him in that capacity on any long-term scale, because in a way our relationship wouldn't allow it. Not in a bad way. It was just our personality types and how we fit or clashed. So what's it like for you two?
The health warning to everybody: just don't do it. Absolutely don't do this. No, I kid. I mean, look, from my perspective, so Nick works full time in our business. So Nick he turns the flywheel every day, and I try and give an extra spin as much as I can. But you're right. It's difficult dynamics. At some points, we have to get everything out on the table, and sometimes that's easier when you're not related. Like in a business setting, like in a job setting, you kind of don't mind going for the other person, but here you have to be sensitive. Don't always get that right, if I'm honest. It's one of those things where we have a principle that, as family and brothers, and our loyalty to each other, that is first and utmost. We ensure that we are locked together, principally as a family. But then when we are in the boardroom, if we're chatting about things around strategy, it can get a bit heated, and we just have to say, look, there's no disrespect to the person, but we're going to air our views and be as direct for the business, right? Like we're directors of a company, and we've got to do our fiduciary duty to the company and for the shareholders, which happen to be the same people. But ultimately, we have to wear two hats. So it is complicated. We have spats. Nick, what would you say? What's your view?
Look, I definitely think that it is a really interesting dynamic, because I've heard a lot of people echo what you say, Dave, about how they couldn't do it. And I think it's two reasons why I think it does work. I think that Gul and I are particularly close, and we always have been particularly close. And I don't know whether that's because we were, pushed together by my parents saying you got to stay close. That might be a part of it, but there's a we are that kind of connected. I mean, I'm very close to Gul geographically now as well. I mean, yesterday it was actually my nephew's sports day. We went over to go and watch his sports day, because of course I'm going to. We have that closeness that kind of allows you to get over any kind of discomfort. And I think the other part of that is probably realizing that there are certain kind of times and spaces where it's not a work time. You have to have a distinction between working time and family time, where we can just be brothers versus colleagues. And if you don't, I think where it doesn't work is where the balance between the two can't be found. I think we found a balance, but again, it's like all types of relationships. It's something you have to continually work on. It's not something which is fixed and perfect as is. But I think for right now we're doing well, and I'm enjoying working with Gul.
I think if you've managed to go this far, you're going to make it work regardless. You're going to do well regardless. It sounds awfully like exactly the same, I'd say, as what I would describe as the relationship when it's a married couple working as well, because obviously Jackie and I work together. We've worked with a lot of people who are a married couple working in what you've just described there, Nick, of the Gul, of the two hats, making sure you've got two distinct hats, the fact that you have boundaries around when you're talking about work and when you're relating together on work and when you're relating together as brothers. It's exactly the same. It's just you've got to keep those boundaries in place. Otherwise, if it bleeds, it can ruin both relationships, which is that when it goes wrong. So it's you guys are clearly managing that really well. That's brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. Next question for you. Right, you've started your careers. You've come in on the commercial sector. I just want to hone in on that slightly. What have been on the commercial sector before you started truly pivoting fully away into other aspects? What have been your biggest kind of learnings or mistakes or things that went wrong and then right? Like what would you advise someone when sharing your experience about the commercial sector?
I think personally now you have to be very, very careful about the kind of areas that you're buying into in a way that you never had to before. I think the quality of the tenants. There used to be an old way of looking at things. When you were looking to buy a commercial unit, you'd be looking for a blue chip kind of tenant who's big firm, who was going to be in there for the long term, professional to deal with. My experience now that's kind of changed. I would actually much rather let to a smaller kind of tenant who has real skin in the game, where they're running something from that site where if they don't perform, they're gonna lose their livelihood. Whereas with these bigger stores right now, I think it's just reading Poundland in the news. I mean, they're going to be going under. Well, a whole load of the shops are going under. They're sold for £1, I believe. Ironically, £1 to be sold, and they're going to be reducing the rents at all the sites unilaterally by some of them to nothing, some of them to 85% of what it was before, 85% below what it was before. And with a bigger kind of store where they're structuring it like that, I feel like you're going to have more issues with the bigger stores. Despite the fact they're more professional and often easier to deal with, I think the long-term viability of a lot of these commercial tenants in a lot of these high streets is not as rosy as I would have liked. So I would say, actually, if you're looking at tenants nowadays, just seriously look at the quality of the tenant as an individual, whatever it is, if it's a smaller business. Just ask yourself, do you really think they're going to be there in the next 5 years' time? Because it used to be, you go back 10, 15 years, the best tenant you can have in a commercial unit would have been like a bank. Because the bank's always going to pay on time. Nobody right now would say a bank is a good tenant. Trying to think of other things. What do you reckon, Gul?
Yeah, I think it's so true. I think you nailed it. My sense is with commercial, it's moved so far away. So I think it's still pushed in some circles as like the dark art of commercial property rather than resi. And there's a way of getting easy checks every quarter. It's fully repairing and insuring. You don't have to do any maintenance. Not like in resi where every time tenant leaves, you have to go in, redo stuff. And I think there's a little bit of a myth around that now. Like it sounds, it's in some scenarios it's too good to be true, because I think Nick's right. To some extent, that was commercial. If you go back to like the noughties, you could get away with a blue chip and you could invest in commercial, and it's very, very simple. But in a world where the actual leases are much shorter, sometimes like 3 to 5 years with breaks in between, they're not necessarily blue chip, or not even, forget the blue chip. Just because you can buy a commercial unit doesn't mean it's a good unit because of the demographics. Like where high streets are generally getting decimated, not even tier 2 and tier 3. Like we know investors who have property on Oxford Street and they've had to put up pop-up like shop kind of sweet candy stores just to keep what would have been a prime, uber prime property in the middle of central London in the shopping district. It won't get let. So I think I would always caution people who think commercial, what they've heard, maybe what was the case 15, 20 years ago, pre-GFC, global financial crisis, that world has changed. It's not as easy to make commercial deals work in that fashion because you just don't get the length of leases, you don't get the lease premiums, you don't get the rent reviews increasing every 5 years. It doesn't exist. So you need to go in with your eyes wide open, and you need to be looking at some form of development opportunity. You can't be looking at this purely on a yield play basis that you can sit back and bank the checks necessarily, because it's not, it doesn't give you the stability that it once used to, that I would say resi does in some ways, but then comes with the maintenance. So you need to be kind of very aware of the market dynamics to make a commercial investment work now.
So that leads me, I'm going to jump in time actually, because I think this is a great conversation to carry on in the now with the new model that you're currently focusing on, which is the mixed use, commercial and resi. What I'd love to know on the commercial aspect, what you've just painted is actually quite a difficult picture. So, and yet you're still wanting to continue with the commercial. I'd like to know two things. Number one, how are you pivoting the commercial aspect in order to make it more viable in the now, where it was in the past? You know, what's different in your new model, basically, with the commercial aspect?
Well, I think we can talk probably to the resi stuff first, isn't it, Nick? Go on.
No, happy to talk. You talk on the resi stuff.
Well, I suppose there's like I suppose from our personal perspective, we'd been so out of residential development for so many years that there was an angle of actually relearning the resi side, both from a development perspective, but also from a management perspective. Once you've got tenants in, right? People like talking about, oh, I did this deal here, I made this much money on this, or this amount of money left in, or no money left in, whatever. But you still have to manage the goddamn things, right? So you have to go through we went through a learning phase of, let's do some bulk resi developments to re-engage that side of the business that was maybe in mum and dad's minds some years ago, but we hadn't done as a company.
Yes.
So we went down a path there where we looked at areas, we worked extensively to understand where are the right demographics, where do the yields work, where can we do some developments which are perceived lower risk developments that could yield development risk returns.
Yes.
And then I suppose where we're at now is saying, well, we've got commercial property, both portfolio that we already have, but also pipeline that we're building, new pipeline, where you can say, actually, there's an angle to, say, for example, buy commercial property where you've done all the demographic checks, you look at the long-term trends, you look at the valuations, you see how rents have improved or not, and you make a call on, could I get commercial units, commercial property in, say, tier 2 towns where there is a development angle. So having done the resi development piece, a lot of these investment opportunities circle around a base of consumer, like retail, commercial property, but there's a development opportunity on the resi side. And that can come, in some cases, we've got stuff which is in planning, or you possibly, if the economics work, you buy something already with planning and you go through the development side of that, which is more the resi piece, ensuring that you're complying with the residential standards. But you then have two income streams. So you have the commercial and you have the resi. So it's been a bit of a baptism of fire. I've gone back into resi, delving into the complexities and the trickiness that Nick has really been spearheading and dealing with tenants and dealing with contractors. And then you can bring it back to a commercial field, which is perhaps less understood by the market. But because we've got a good understanding of how commercial tenants work, what's their cadence with in terms of reach out to the tenants and how to work with them to get mutually beneficial outcomes, we've got to a position where you combine the two, and that's where we've landed up now, which is doing commercial to mixed use development opportunities.
Great.
And
yeah, carry on, Nick.
I was just going to say, and on how, like, when we look at commercial tenants, so I think to your original kind of question about what we're thinking, if you're looking at a lot of these commercial properties throughout the UK, a lot of them are not suitable for the kind of tenants that necessarily want to move into them. So there are a bunch of things that you can do to really increase the desirability of these units. So a lot of them, you might have a big unit which is vacant, and you could look to maybe separate the unit into 2 separate units, and thereby bring the rateable value down low enough such that you maybe, the tenant would qualify for a small business rates relief. So that's one thing you can do. One other thing that I've heard of other people doing, which I think we would definitely look at doing, would be going beyond FRI in the fit out of a place to say, hey, with a new tenancy, we would even look to, as a part of doing our fit out FRI, doing it up, getting it all ready for you to do a fit out. Maybe we'll put in the flooring or something else like that to help you along. There are things you can do there, and I think the areas we're looking at, I think as Gul was saying, the right kind of places when you've done the analysis on the demographics in those areas. Especially if you're familiar with those areas. I think we all know maybe a high street or something which is near to us where it's always thriving no matter what. We always know there's whenever a shop comes up, it goes. There are still places like that throughout the country. It's about identifying those specific places and making sure that the fundamentals are sound for the foreseeable future. Just wanted to add that a bit.
Awesome. So your focus really is on finding areas where the high street's still bustling enough to get passing foot traffic and people interested to go into something. You're taking bigger commercial units on the ground floor and breaking them up basically into something that you can get smaller businesses into. The big business, because you're not so in, those bigger businesses aren't so secure anymore. And then you're looking for things where the upper parts can be brought into the residential sector, maybe converted into flats, or maybe they're already kind of flats, but they just need to be shaken up a bit, so that you can get that diversification of income streams. And between all of that, you've mitigated most of the issues that you've encountered in the commercial sector so far, right? Does that sum it up? Roughly.
Summed it up pretty well.
Amazing. I mean, I love it because what I love about you guys is you obviously come with this wealth of experience and knowledge, but you're always learning, you're always looking for the new, better thing to do. And I think one of the things you guys have been very lucky with, compared to a lot of people, is actually, I know the learning curve to be able to do the planning and do the that conversion piece, actually doing the conversion from the commercial to resi is hard. And we've had lots of people I know who go into that, try it once, maybe, it goes really hard and it's really tough and they're just like, I never want to do that again. But one of the reasons it's so hard is because the deal as a whole, the purchase of it is very expensive, and the bridging finance is very expensive, and it makes the whole deal very tricky to navigate. But I know you guys have been, what I would say is supremely lucky to have a portfolio there from the family to be able to trial and test this model first and actually just work on a much lower risk basis where you're looking at stock going, that could be great. Let's get some planning on it. It's sitting there, maybe unencumbered, maybe very low mortgage rate. It's in a safe position. Let's play with it, right? Just give me a little bit of how that journey's been.
Yeah, I think certainly having the ability to go through the planning process. I mean, I think anyone who's been going through the planning process to do multiple units can attest to the fact it's. I'm trying to be nice on this. The system is a dumpster fire. It's difficult to get things through because there's just a lot of NIMBYism in the system as a whole. And there are so many checks and balances and things you need to jump through, so many hoops to jump through. It's a miracle, anything can get built, really. So after going through a few of them, you do know all the things that you need to necessarily ask for. I think one of the big learnings we've had is how important it is having a really good team of people. So 100%. if you're looking to go and get planning, it's so easy just to get an architect. You maybe interview a few of them, you'll like a particular one, but we're at the point now where we're like, hey, we need to have planning consultants. We need to have people at every step of the journey, because that's the way you can efficiently get it done. You need to have a person who's going to be proactive in actually chasing up the planning applications and getting stuff done where they stick to timeframes. I found that going through that process a few times now, and currently going through that process, and you continue learning things. I'm learning different lessons now than I did previously. You make mistakes, you learn from them, and you make new mistakes, and you learn from those ones as well. We've gotten to the point now where we're confident in our abilities to get projects through. But obviously, yes, it did take a bit of time, and I'm grateful that we've gained that kind of experience, and we had the opportunity to kind of learn on some of the existing portfolio before going off and doing bigger kind of projects ourselves.
Great.
Yeah.
What is the future of those bigger projects like when you're looking ahead, and what's in the pipeline right now that you're now expanding into? Because I've seen you go through that development phase, and particularly you, Nick, managing it over the last year or two, and you kind of have seen that experimentation phase. And actually, I would love to hear in a second you talk about trial and error and things you learn from your mistakes. I'd love to hear one of those mistakes. That'd be really great. So have a think about that, Nick. But Gul, why don't you just talk about what's the vision for the company right now in terms of pipeline of projects, type of projects, how many you're wanting to grow to? How's the future looking?
Yeah, it's looking bright. It's the best place we've been. I think our aim is at any given point in time, we want to be doing at least 2 or 3 projects in a given kind of calendar year. So we've just been through a phase of 3 projects. So 2 pure resi flat block, so multi-unit flat block opportunities where we bought at a very good discount, managed to complete reworks and achieve very strong GDV uplifts and returned capital. So those were both with investors in both of those. We also did our own first commercial conversion within our portfolio. So we've actually just in the space, literally in May 2025, just gone, I went through 3 refinancings of those projects. So we're kind of like back in cash. We've paid back investors. And now we're going through to this next phase. So I'd say there's 3 projects. Again, like we're trying to work in phases. There are different stages. So I always feel with these things, you might just see people say, I am doing this, doing that. But things take time, right? And in this journey, even as seasoned property people, like I wouldn't say if you've never done property, just go straight into commercial conversions, because there's so much stuff that we already had knowledge of that's taken us this time to get to this point now where we're happy and more comfortable, and not even like 100% comfortable, right? You're still always learning, to Nick's point. But where we've got to is we've got 3 very exciting existing projects that are in train at different stages. So the first is an existing, it's a conversion of a Costa Coffee on the downstairs commercial unit that was completely vacant. It was originally a Woolworths purpose-built unit. Woolworths downstairs for retail, upstairs was the where they kept all the stock. Costa Coffee doesn't need literally like 3,500 square foot warehouse. It just needs like something the size of this room for a few coffee cups. So we went through a planning phase that's been delivered, went through the baptism of fire on that kind of a pre-app process as well. And we finally got it through planning with the council. And now we're effectively we've also realized, to Nick's point just made, is as you get more skilled, you realize that you shouldn't necessarily be doing everything yourself. So on this occasion, this is the first time where our architect, who's absolutely phenomenal, was running the tender process. So we've outsourced the tendering and got some very, very compelling competitive tenders. And it allows us to continue on strategy rather than like all the nitty gritties of delivering a project. So that project we should be selecting somebody later this month and kicking off works in July with a 6-month runway. So that's a conversion of an upper pass into four new units.
Great.
We've got another similar project, again, 4, but with potential to go to 6 units above a banking commercial tenant. That's up in South Yorkshire region. And now, so as the creative juices start flowing and you start seeing patterns and you identify opportunities, whether that be in new projects, but also in the existing portfolio. So, for example, there's something where we've seen a South Yorkshire-based asset, because we bought all over the place back in the day. So we've got stuff in the north. This is the most exciting. So we're in a pre-app phase now for what I'd call like a small supermarket asset. There's a question mark there around whether the tenant will continue with their lease in the next 6 months. But we don't see that as a downside. We see that as an opportunity, because regardless of whether they take that opportunity to stay in the building, if they don't, this is to Nick's point earlier, we can look at maybe maximizing commercial rent by splitting that into 2 or 3 units, given it's like sizable. And given the footprint is about 13,500 square foot, we're now getting from other architects, our house architect, but also other getting local development and architectural experience. How could we look to add a very substantial scheme? So that's a scheme now where we're in the early stages of a pre-app around probably putting around up to 20 units. So we've kind of started low level, pure resi, commercial with small units of conversion. Now we're kind of operating at 4 to 6, but you can see on the horizon in the existing portfolio something which could be much more substantial. And for all of these, I think off the back of our kind of thesis is that we always want to put skin in the game. So like we will obviously put in our own skin. Not everybody's willing to do that, but for us, it's important that we're fully invested in these projects. And in most cases, we're looking to hold these things for the long term. Like we're a family business. I've got young children. We're building a legacy for the next generation. So we want to keep as much of these units in the Glensec ecosystem for as long as possible. So I think really we've got these kind of increasingly large development opportunities in the portfolio, and then we've got these other ones like the 2 of the 3 that we just completed and finished and refinanced were external opportunities where we went out and went in the market and bought these opportunities and then brought investors in, and we're looking to do more of those as well. So it's quite exciting that we've both got, I'd say, organic and inorganic opportunities, and just a really exciting time of expansion. But I would say with my investment banking hat on, you got to do these things in a sustainable way. And I think the Instagram generation that we live in is very much like, do now, do this right in the moment. Things can happen really, really quickly. But you also don't want to put a lot of risk. And what I see is a lot of people who get into development early on, particularly in something which is I'd say vanilla, like vanilla buy to let. So if you're doing something more complicated, like commercial conversions or large scale HMOs, is you don't want to get into so many developments so quickly. Sometimes you have a lot of quick wins, but then what can happen is you blow all your money on like the 4th project. So you've actually made loads of profit in 3 developments, but because you haven't got the white hair from being in the industry for long enough, you go like all chips on black on something which you think is going to have a massive payoff. And if you're not careful in these environments, it can. I've seen other people in the space that basically lose all the profits they've made in the first 3. So the key in these things is to accumulate knowledge from fundamentals and first principles. So Nick is very, very good at that in terms of, I found, not trying to run before you can walk. Get your base knowledge, really get honed on it, understand it. There's a balance in life, right? Between like perfectionism. You don't want to be perfect, but you want to like get the 80-20 and move on. If you haven't, a lot of other people in the industry that I see, they're trying to run before they can walk. And that's just not advisable because there's a lot of capital at stake, other people's money at stake. For us, that's just, I want to sleep easy at night when I've either got a personal guarantee or I've invested someone else's money. Like it's, this is a paramount of importance when you're trying to scale a portfolio. But yeah, look, back to your original point, very exciting time for the business, both inorganically and organically.
It's fantastic to hear all of that, Gul. And I think, it is a tough business. It's tough business, property in general. And you're right to say everything there. I've seen it happen too often that people scale too fast and they become chaos. And it's too easy to trip and fall on your face. And then not only you get hurt, but the investors get hurt too. And that is the last thing anyone wants. And what I love about you guys in general is that you epitomize, for me, the sensible, it's like proceed with caution. But from a history, a good historical experience and knowledge, you're able to proceed, with some pace and speed with caution. You're able to actually, expand yourselves and push forwards. And I see you guys doing a lot, but it is always with that hat on, risk mitigation hat of saying, let's not go too fast. Let's not just trip over our feet. Let's make sure that we're doing everything right. Let's make sure we're learning from our past mistakes before we do a lot more. And somehow at the same time, still managing to keep going and doing more. You don't let it hold you back, which is why I think it's one of the things that makes you guys so successful, especially as a pair, to have that. So bring me back to Nick. I hope you've had a little bit of time to think. I do want to hear about, a little bit of one of the mistakes of the past. Share with the audience. What have you?
Oh my God!
Where's it gone wrong?
I think one of the times which is really stuck in my brain is when I was. It was because I was feeling a little bit cheap. I think it was the problem. There was an architect, so we were getting quotes to do just a simple scheme in Slough, just converting first floor into flats. I think actually at that time we were trying to look at adding a floor, and we got quotes from a whole load of different architects, and I met all of them, and there was a gut instinct with this guy when I met him. I was like, there's something just a little bit off. I don't know what it is, but when I got back, I put all the different quotes we had, I put them in the Excel and compared them all. I was like, but he's a very good price. I should really seriously consider him. And that was so I should really, really consider him. And I actually made the recommendation to let's go ahead and use this guy. And it was the worst mistake I've ever made. He was incredibly late with everything. He didn't supply anything on time. I believe he measured the building up wrong, and I had to correct him and say, no, there is a window there that you've not put on the existing plans. Small things like that. And I didn't realize how much listening to the gut is important, because I think there's almost like a fight I have between listening to my gut and listening to my brain, where my brain is always like, you need to just look at everything completely analytically, but there is a certain emotional element. I mean, property is a people kind of business. You're dealing with a lot of different people, from tradesmen, architects, every person you can think of. If you don't have that good instinct with people, there's a reason for that. We're programmed like to respond to that. We're animals. We can sense when something's off. And I would just say that's the thing I really have learned. You need to trust your instincts. It cannot be entirely brain based. It has to be gut as well.
It's not professional, right? Like, as in, it's not a professionalized industry. So it's interesting because you can stand out in the industry by sticking to the basic principles of like the character principles of like just showing up, being on time, but you don't necessarily get that reciprocated. So this is where I think Nick's spot on. You need to be able to spend the time trusting your gut instinct with the people who ultimately you're going to get delivering the project. Because we're not this, like, we're busy people trying to originate new deals, manage the portfolio. I've got a day job, and ultimately the success of any business, because we see it as a business, right? It's not like a side hustle. So to do a business, you're putting a lot of trust in other people. So you need to invest time in those people, and you need to form a gut feel. And it's not all about logic. So I think Nick is spot on. It's, do you have the ability to trust your gut feel in this and go for the people that you think that when they shake their hand, their word is their bond? That's not always simple in this space. Yeah. That's right across the spectrum, not just like contractors.
I'd say it's not simple in any part of the equation of any business, right? You're choosing your team, choosing the people who are going to support you anywhere. I guess it's so clear what you're saying, obviously, trust your gut, but I'd love to know, how would you actually assess that in future, apart from just the gut? You're looking at these quotes, you're saying these cheaper, but something's a bit off. But is it worth finding out a bit more? Because obviously it doesn't just mean you look every time and go, no, it seems a bit too cheap, he's out. Is there something you do differently next time? Obviously there would be something different, but what would you do next time to try and then assess him for the next level to see if he's going to be, what you've just described, crap, basically?
That's a really good question, Dave. I think my mentality now has been, at the beginning, I just think purely with all the people I've got in front of me, who do I actually want to work with? The money is something you get to offers, but the first fundamental question is, who is the person that I want to work with on this project? And that guides everything, unless it's something ridiculously, a lot more than it should be, which I think rarely happens. I think people who are, professional, they price their work fairly. And to be frank, people who are going to do a better job they should be charging more, frankly. I mean, I would definitely pay more for a person who's more competent in what they do. So I just take every interaction on the basis of who do I actually want to spend my working hours with, because I've got to interact with this person for a long period of time. Could be in multiple projects even that you might do with them. So that's how I would assess anything now. And if I was to think about how the money kind of plays into it, when you're talking about these kind of bigger schemes where you're doing, lots of different flats and everything, you just have to accept the fact that you want to pay a little bit extra just to have the peace of mind that you've got the right person in that position. And I think that's always worth it.
And I think you have to back it up. The more and more that we find now, you're looking for references. You're going that extra step with your DD, whether that be us or say architects. We're right now going through a tender, right? That I was saying earlier, a tender package for this development, commercial conversion, 4 units, brand new. You need to be looking at their Facebooks, right? Of the guys that you're dealing with. Like, who are these guys? What's the references? What if people have Trustpilot on things? Like, don't just go purely on the gut. Like, follow your gut, because to Nick's point, you're almost dealing with the character and the values, and you're trying to find, like, is there a match in value system? And then you need to verify that as a second. And then the money, to Nick's point, I agree. It's like, you'll find a deal. There'll be a point for some people that won't work, and you could I'm always very upfront, both even with like estate agents, with contractors. I'll be like, look, here's the calcs. If they don't work, I can't. This doesn't make sense for me. So I think that then that's more of the dance of a negotiation, commercial negotiation, which I enjoy, frankly. But yeah, look, I think that's the key. Essentially, it's assess the character, then do your checks, do your background checks, do your referencing, ask around, see prior projects, get shown. Don't take everything at face value, because also there are a lot of wrong uns out there that will put on that game that they're the best, but then they don't show up. So you need the time. This is why I'm so grateful for Nick, because he can go 2-hour drive up to Northamptonshire, meet with somebody, go meet with somebody who's heard about them, come back down. That's why it's very valuable having someone like day to day running it. So yeah, I know that's the way you assess.
That's amazing. I would wholeheartedly agree with everything you've just said there. The gut followed by the due diligence, and the due diligence has to be a full holistic approach. Look at company's house, look at their
100%.
accounts, double check their trust reviews, and get referrals, talk to people.
Insurance.
Do it all, do all the due diligence properly. Don't skimp on it just because you like the guy, but also go with the person you like and negotiate the price to try and get it to work. And that's great advice. So look, I know you guys, we come to the end here. Like, I feel like I'm very excited for you. I think you guys have this unbelievable foundation. I love your approach. I also really love your model, and I think the experience you have and what you've built up in experience gives you such a great grounding and a foundation for how you're going to scale up next, which is very exciting to watch. And I know you're scaling up. You're working. You obviously say you put skin in the game, but you're working with investors, which means in theory you've got this unbelievable potential and opportunity to grow yourselves really well and really quickly, but in a way that I think is very, very sustainable is a great word you use. Robust and sustainable as a business, as a company, just making sure that everything does go okay and making sure you can weather the challenges and you can problem solve. You've got all of that going for you, which is so wonderful to watch and be involved with. So thank you guys. My last question for you both, people listening to this, thinking about maybe getting into the mixed use space, thinking, that sounds really good what those guys are doing. I've got a bit of experience. I've done a couple of, conversions of my own or something of my own, but I like what they're doing. What would your biggest piece of advice be for someone trying to get into this space?
Ooh.
I know, sorry, I put you on the spot.
Big question, that. I think it would go back to what I think we said a little bit earlier around, you have to make sure that areas you're buying in are fundamentally good areas. I mean, if it's an area personally, like it's a local shopping parade or something like that, you know, personally, great, fantastic. That's the kind of place you should go because you know what it's like there. But you've really got to make sure that the fundamentals are going to be strong in those locations because, you know, there's a lot of high streets up north where things are a lot more depressed than they are. And you need to make sure that you're going to be in one of those places which is going to continue to thrive.
Nice. So get the area right, make sure the fundamentals are correct, and make sure it's an area that you believe through what you're seeing is going to thrive moving forwards, and you've got good reasons for that. That's brilliant, Nick. What about you, Gul?
Yeah, look, I echo that. I think with commercial and commercial conversions, you need to make sure that you go in and assemble a team of people, of experts very quickly. So that starts with planning consultants. You need an architect who's not just necessarily your resi architect doing, you know, single story back extensions. You need somebody who can think creatively to come up with a scheme. Because often commercial is one of those where the space is really awkward and it's not nice squares, it's random shapes. So you need a really creative architect and a really creative planning consultant to form the best scheme with the space, but also something that's deliverable. Because as much as you hear Labour saying that we're going to open the floodgates and allow for planning, those guys are so far away from the realities that Nick and I are facing, and it's a little bit of a joke. So you need to make sure your team who are developing a scheme understand what the other side needs, particularly if you're in an area. Do they have links to the area? Because you got to be careful. Some architects will, I can do all of England and Wales. Doesn't matter. Where are you based? I'm based in Carlisle, and you're doing a project in Norwich. Like, if that is your area, say East Anglia, you need to know people who have inner workings with the local authority. Those people, if you've got local contacts, and this talks to, I think, building on what Nick said, really, you need to be very focused on an area geographically in order to scale. So you want to find the right demographics, the right types of property, and the criteria is set. The right planning consultants and architects who know the nuance of that area. What are the things that they're hot on or not? And then you need to be working with contractors that are of some scale, so not like one-man band type guys, but who know that area, who've delivered in that area, that can show you projects that are comparable, who've done commercial conversions particularly, because a lot of guys are very good at resi, but commercial, and you know this, Dave, around like utilities and you're working with acoustics with the commercial on the downstairs, and you got to make sure that the flat, like, it doesn't matter if you're just in a resi area, none of that stuff matters. So you need to make sure you're assembling the right team, and the power team is effectively what's going to amplify your ability to do deals. Because if you're trying to do this on the fly and do it cheap and keep all the costs in house, and you've never done commercial, there's a lot that can go wrong here, and there's a lot of due diligence on the commercial demographics of the commercial. Like, is this a high street that's going to last? Actually, is there a redevelopment of this area? Like, you need to be in the know on that. And then you also got to be like, is there a resi lens here? Like, what is the draw for people to want to live in this area? So you're having to balance the two, because quite often commercial and resi, they're at odds. So there's a lot of due diligence up front that needs to be done too. I think there's a whole host of stuff, but it starts with getting the area, getting the contacts, and then the rest, it takes time. Like, I think people expect this stuff to happen, or you can find an area and you'll do your first deal in 3 to 6 months. It's usually rubbish. These things take a lot of time, right? They take 6 to 12 months of just following the market, following deals, like shadow doing deals, which is a lot of what we're now doing in certain areas. You want to shadow, was that a good deal that was done there? Would I have done that in that auction? It was bought at this. Oof, where was my price? So you need to put in the time and the effort, and in order to make sure this all works. Because if it doesn't, you can be leaving a lot of money in those deals with not a lot of yield. So yeah, tread with caution. But as I say, I like to try and be a rational optimist with all these things. So that that's the lens we apply.
Amazing advice, Gul, and you as well, Nick. Thank you so much for your time. This has been a great chat, a great conversation. You guys have got so much knowledge to share, and thank you for sharing it on this.
Oh, Absolutely love those guys. They are just so smart and they're doing just such an incredible job of how they are growing Glensec. So do make sure you connect with them off the back of today's episode. Their website is glensec.com. That's spelt GLENSEC. Their email address and LinkedIn accounts are also linked in the show notes here, but really a fantastic pair and definitely worth staying connected with. This time next week I'll be back with Dave and we're talking about mental bankruptcy. What does it really mean to be mentally bankrupt, and how do we actually often experience this without truly realising what's gone on there? So a fantastic episode to come. If you're new to the show and you've enjoyed today's episode, please do hit subscribe so that you get notified about our next episode being released, which is every Friday. But for now, have a fantastic week ahead and we'll be back on Friday next week.